All right, my friends, welcome back to Salt City Counseling. Once again, my name's Scott. I'm a licensed therapist here in the beautiful state of Utah. It is too, man. I do. I love Utah. It is, if you've never spent time in Utah wilderness and going through the state parks and monuments and stuff, man, you are missing out. This is such a beautiful place. In this video, I'm going to address something that's probably going to be a little bit tough. This is a tough topic, but it must be talked about. It must be addressed. It's really important. It is a difficult discussion, but frankly, you are unlikely to find others such as myself or like myself who are going to engage in these types of discussions when they are needed. Specifically, I'm going to answer the question, should you be concerned about your children growing up to develop their own personality disorder? And additionally, I'm going to address what you can and really ought to do as a parent in order to help them from getting there in the first place. Okay? And it's kind of a complex equation. It's difficult, but and it's hard. It's going to be difficult. Truth be told, I do believe that if a individual who has a personality disorder, specifically borderline or narcissism, their method of parenting is more than likely to churn out at least one child who's going to grow up and have a similar type of personality disorder. And to me, once again, narcissism and borderline, they have a really strong overlap. They have a lot of common traits, common behaviors. They look a lot alike in many regards. Borderline with an emphasis on the fear of abandonment, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. And narcissism, of course, is frantic efforts to avoid vulnerability. And what you want to look out for is these behaviors in your children and early on. Now, in terms of family patterns and behaviors, what I've often seen, for example, the oldest child can end up being a caretaker. So the oldest child ends up being kind of codependent. Not always, but they can often grow up to honestly find themselves married to or being in a relationship with someone who is precisely like their narcissistic or borderline parent. They're the ones that are more than likely to marry someone who has this personality disorder. There's this old adage, man, in psychology that goes like this: you become one parent, you marry the other. And I swear to God, man, the more that I do this, the more I'm like, oh wow, that's actually really true. That's actually more true than I thought, man. And so a lot of you that may have gotten into a relationship with someone who's narcissistic or borderline, you may want to look at your parents, which one of them might have some of these traits, but I digress. Oftentimes, what I found, the one that's more than likely to develop their own personality disorder is the youngest child. The youngest child, who often can become kind of the golden child, or the one that gets the most favoritism and gets pitted against the older children, and just seems to adopt a lot of those aspects in their behaviors. And what you want to do is start kind of looking for some of these behaviors early on, because they will. I've met a lot of kids who were quite young and were emulating, kind of echoing, mimicking, parroting, whatever, the destructive interpersonal patterns of a high conflict parent or a parent with a personality disorder. And that's not to say that the child has a personality disorder. I don't believe that's true whatsoever. I actually just believe that the kid ends up emulating those behaviors out of the parent that they see from the parent. And so here are the crucial elements to their development. Okay, number one is identity. Okay, so to me, the most significant criteria for personality disorders is an identity disturbance, that they don't have a formulation of a healthy identity. Because what happens is usually a parent with a personality disorder becomes threatened by their child forming some sort of identity. It's interesting because, frankly, cluster B parents the borderlines, narcissists specifically, they tend to see formations of identity that people who have like a strong sense of who they are, they tend to see that as narcissism, and will often label it as such. Okay. And we hear this all the time, by the way, especially from high conflict borderline moms. You're a narcissist. You're a narcissist. If you have any sense of self-assurance or confidence or like unwavering sense of self, right? If you feel like you know who you are, they're going to interpret that as narcissism, and it's not. It's really has a lot to do with their own failure to look at their own issues, their own nonsense, their own craziness, right? And that's just kind of how it is. That's just how that goes. But for your kids, you want them to have a healthy formation of who they are. Now, what happens is that, like, if you have a narcissistic father, for example, this is where it becomes the most insidious. Narcissistic fathers are heinously destructive in the formation of a healthy ego and a healthy identity in children. I mean, they are heinously destructive. And what I've often encountered with kids who have a really malignant narcissistic father is they get to be around 15, 16 years old, and they're just completely homogenous. They have no personality. They have no identity. They're very bland. They're very monotone. They don't talk a lot. They don't make eye contact, because they've unfortunately learned and been conditioned that if they show any form of self-expression, boom, like a whack-a-mole machine, the narcissistic father is like, what are you doing? Whack, right? And kind of punishing them when they show this identity formation. Now, with a borderline parent, it's not quite that way. What I've noticed mostly is that their identity becomes more wrapped up in drama, being a victim, making everything about them, and those types of things, and almost like creating the interpersonal social circle to be that it just orbits around them, that they're in charge, they're in control, they're the drama queens, whatever the case may be. They're always the victim, but what about me, making everything about them. So you're going to want to notice some of these things in your kids, right? And what you don't want to do is get really hard on them. That's the last thing that you want to do. So if you have a kid who's really has a lot of drama around them, or is kind of let's be honest, an emotional terrorist, because honestly, this is what we see out of the cluster Bs, is this emotional terrorism. And don't punish them. Don't get angry with them. Don't get short with them. You want to help them explore that. You want to create insight and awareness around that. You want to help them understand their own behavior and how it affects others. You want to help them develop empathy. You want to help them create awareness of how their actions, their behaviors, and their words affect the world around them. Sadly, what I find is that, right, apologetic parents, the codependent type parents, they're often afraid of conflict. They're afraid of being the bad guy. They're afraid of doing anything that might upset or alienate their children. They worry that their children might get mad at them and then not want to have anything to do with them, when in fact children more than anything want and need the love, approval, and validation of their parents, whether they realize it or not, right? But so that's in a nutshell. I'd be happy to elaborate on any and all of this. By the way, just put a question, send me a question or comment, or ask me where you want me to elaborate. I'll be happy to create future content on that, okay? But my first point in this video is going to be the healthy formation of the self, or an identity, ego strength, and all of that under that umbrella. Does that make sense? If it's clear as mud, let me know. Please comment, whatever. I'll get to the next point here in a second. I'd actually like to get some housekeeping out of the way. I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers. I've been at this a while here on YouTube. And so you can really help me out. I'm so close to 1,000. Help me get there. I just checked today. I have like 21 left to go. That's nothing. I could get that in a day if enough of you were to like and share and comment on this and help me out. Okay. And once I do get to 1,000, I'd really like to do some live events, some super chats, pick a topic such as this one, right? A topic about kids and supporting them and their own development of ego strength would be a great topic for a super chat. So please subscribe. Help me get there. Okay. In fact, at the time of recording this, I'd really like to maybe do a live event next week, go live next week and see how it goes. Give it a shot and get our feet wet. So anyways, back to it. The second point I'm going to make in this video before I wrap it up, I may make a couple more, is you want to be leery of trauma in your child. Specifically, you want to be leery of what I call small t or soft t, because hard T or big T is like singular violent event that the child witnessed, that the child experienced. There's an impact on their personality where they create a fracture and the fragmentation can start. The small t or the soft t, I call it that way because we can't necessarily narrow it down to one singular event. Just ongoing psychological fear and terrorism that happens to them and creates trauma to their personality, that creates trauma to their growth and their development. That's the type of trauma that I'm talking about, which to me is just as impactful, just as important to the growth of a human, and yet way, way, way more subtle, way more insidious, way more difficult to address, it's hard to put your finger on it. A lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of denial involved with this type of trauma. But you want to be leery of this trauma. Now, the apologetic parents often, to me, show this. They tend to hope and believe that they can prevent their child from experiencing any trauma if you have a high conflict ex, if you have a ex who's borderline or narcissism, or if the kids have a parent who is borderline or narcissistic. This idea that you can prevent them from experiencing this type of trauma, to me, is not realistic. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be honest. You are probably, those kids are more than likely going to experience that, more than likely. You can just count on it. We can't always control what our kids are exposed to. We can, however, influence how they interpret it and what they do with it. So we want to focus on that end of it. How do we help them interpret this or work through it or support them or understand it, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that's the part you need to focus on. A lot of you have called me. A lot of you have reached out to me to ask for some help, some consultation, or some coaching in various aspects of all of this. And I've told virtually all of you that have that you probably need to let go of the idea that you can prevent the kids from experiencing trauma. But you want to be aware of it. You want to have some awareness of it. Try to take your feelings of personal guilt or shame out of it. That's not going to help. It's not going to help them. Forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself, and be supportive to them. Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with, by the way, this topic is a mile wide and a mile deep. Again, I think this could make an excellent live event. I think this could make an excellent super chat. But I would love your feedback. Let me know in the comments. But as your child grows, validation, accountability, and helping them practice insight and awareness, even if it's painful, they've got to do it. And personal responsibility. You want to help elevate this idea of personal responsibility and personal accountability into them, so that they see it as a virtue and a positive thing versus something that's painful and should be avoided. I know that is it's a tall order, man. That's a big ask. It really is. I know that's complicated. It's hard. But that's what I can give you in 15 or less minutes. So once again, give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. I like this topic. It's a challenging topic. And if there are those of you out there who are wanting some parenting coaching, I love giving it. Honestly, when it comes to the high conflict stuff, helping parents make the most out of their relationship is really what gets me going, is really what gets me out of bed, because Hearing your stories and seeing you create better relationships with your kids and having that trust and supporting them through the challenges is really where I find the reward, a lot of the reward. So I'm going to wrap it up. Go, please hit the tip jar. Buy me a coffee. The link will be in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.